So the first thing then, where are you going to put them in the garden? So you can see we've put ours at this side of the garden where it is, well, at the minute I was going to say where it's really sunny. When it's really sunny, this spot gets baked by the sun. But it's not just the sun. That bit of the garden gets as much light as is possible for our garden. In the morning, the sun comes up over there. So this is the first bit to get light. During the day, it goes that way. So the very last thing in the evening, it's still this bit of the garden that gets the light. So it really helps me for my growing my veggies and my plants and stuff because they're getting the maximum amount of light and sunlight they can in this garden. So that's the number one thing to think about with your raised beds, about where you're putting them, but also in terms of this. Where you put them in the garden, you need to think about, can you get around the beds? Okay, space to walk, because you're going to have to get to the beds. So you want to be able to walk around them. And on that same idea is the size, because if I open this up to show you, you need to be able to reach things in the bed. So if I want to get to, say, this little pot here with the runners in it, or this one, I need to be able to reach. So the size of the bed, you don't want the bed to be so big that you can't actually reach, because you don't want to have to stand in the bed, okay? So have a think about that. Can you reach all the way to the other side? And if you can't, can you walk around and get to that side of the bed? It's funny, you'd be surprised how many people don't think of this stuff, but it is actually really important for helping you to garden. Now, especially for us, we've got these amazing hinged hoops that we put our nets on. That means I can't get to the beds from that side for any of the beds. So that can be a bit of a problem. So luckily I can reach. So, something to think about. The reason I'm saying you have to think about these things, luckily these pots are all on wheels. So, even though I can squeeze up here to get to the bed, if it's been raining, I might not want to because this bit's wet. So, where the beds are, so you can get access to them, the size of them, so that you can actually garden in them easily. The next thing, I suppose, is materials. Now, you can see our beds are all these raised sleepers, okay? They weren't always. We started off with really thin boards that had pegs in the corners holding it into the ground, and that's what we started off with. And we've changed these. And this is a really good point, because thinking about your material, wood looks fantastic. We've got wooden beds because we like how they look, but we've had to accept that they're not going to last forever. Case in point, after 8 years, we had to replace the old beds because the wood had all rotted, okay? Even though it was treated, it still rots. Okay, so we've gone with these big raised bed sleepers, these big sleepers to make our raised beds. They're really, really solid and heavy and will last a lot longer. There are other things you need to think about with that. For instance, older railway sleepers used to be treated, I think it was creosote they were treated with, which we now know is quite harmful. So you're absolutely not recommended to build your beds out of that kind of stuff. In fact, if you have those old types of beds, you're recommended that you wear gloves and things if you're touching them, okay? If you want to think about material that will last a lot longer, you could make your beds, you could make out of brick, stone, or you could even buy some galvanised steel tubs and they could be your raised beds, okay? So material, what does it look like? How long will it last? And has it had any treatments? We have now built 6 raised, in fact, no more. We've got these raised beds, but we've also got a bed at the back that Kate's built up and things as well. So we've actually built, I think, 7 raised beds now. And we learned as we went. The first thing we learned was make sure, do a good job of levelling out the ground before you get going, okay? We didn't. We were super lazy. We broke the ground up and then built the bed on it and then filled it with soil, but we didn't level it properly and it ended up with the beds were all really, really wonky. And apart from it's an eyesore, what you find is then when you're watering or when it rains, the water pools in certain areas and runs, so you don't get an even watering. And it can mean you get some bits of your bed are quite wet and some are quite damp and stuff. And it's a bit of a pain for growing in. So get it all nice and level before you start. The second thing we learned was don't build your beds in situ. Trust me on this one. We learned through experience that it was much easier to build the beds over on the patio where you could make sure they were all true and square and level and everything, and then move them into place. So we built each level and then moved it into place. It was so much easier. We did originally build them in situ, and it was just a nightmare of just the space of trying to get around and doing things and trying to get them true and square and things when the ground wasn't 100% level, all that kind of thing. It's much easier to build them over there and then bring them to where they're going to go and just fasten them all up in place. So that leads me on then to the last little bit, which is about the soil, okay? Because as you can imagine, it's quite expensive to fill these, okay? So why would you, especially given I've said this is not magic and it's just normal gardening, why would you have raised beds? It's much cheaper to not. Well, the first thing I suppose is growing in your garden, you still have to maintain the soil, okay? So it takes time of adding that organic matter if you don't have great soil and building that up and getting it right. Whereas you can actually create your mix straight away for putting in here, okay? And the mix that I recommend for doing this is mostly topsoil, so about 60% just cheap topsoil. And then you want about 30% of good organic compost, like organic matter from your compost bin. And that last little bit, the last 10%, is when you actually put in the really, really nice kind of potting soil type mixes. And also remember that you have to refresh this every single year like you would any other bed in the garden. I'm constantly adding organic stuff from my compost bin in and giving that a dig over. So it just keeps it nice and fresh. And I have to say I'm really pleased. I've got this really beautiful black, very free draining soil. It's gorgeous and I can grow a whole lot of different things in there. It's great. And I know at least one of you guys has commented on you're very, very jealous of my soil. You can have that too if you're doing it in the garden. You just need to take the time to be digging this organic matter through it. Or again, making your mix if you're doing your own raised beds. So yeah. So I think that is everything. I've probably missed something really important that you guys want to know. So if I have, shove it down in the comments and ask, okay? And I'll remember that for when I do the next video. But apart from that, as usual, grow those likes, hit that wee thumbs up like button down below. And if you want to get notified every time I do a video, join us in our wee community here on YouTube and click that subscribe button and the wee bell so that you can make sure that YouTube know to tell you every time I do a video. So that is me from our gorgeous sunny garden for today. I'm now going to go and basically sit in the sun with a book. See you guys.